And thank you all for being here once again at our Unified Homeless Response Center for our 5th regular and ongoing briefing about the City of LA's response to our homelessness crisis. Before we dig into the details, I want to remind everybody, as I do each one of these briefings, as always, we're covering what this city is doing to cover the emergency. We're not covering other cities. We're not covering the county, the state, other localities, and the federal government, except when they intersect with the city. And we always see ourselves as one essential part of a broader coalition and a broader strategy to bring the most vulnerable residents of Los Angeles, our neighbors, off the streets. And while our federal and local funding sources, constitutions, charters, programs, assign few resources and jurisdictional responsibility to the city and to cities in general over the causes and cures of homelessness, that doesn't stop me, this city council, and others from being a very loud voice and taking big steps to address this crisis. We are positioned for a very good year in 2020. This is going to be a year of action. And we've already seen much of what we've been ramping up really come. This year we'll see a lot of that come to fruition. We've already seen those milestones in the first month of 2020, signs of what's happening in communities across Los Angeles to confront this crisis with the sense of urgency it deserves. We kicked things off by opening up the second HHH project and our first HHH-funded supportive housing development at 88th and Vermont, which you can see here, a major milestone, less than 2.5 years after the bonds were first put out for HHH. I also remind folks, because I know, for instance, there's like an LA Times graphic and others, that there was permanent supportive housing being built in that time in between, just HHH dollars, which rolled out. This is the first one where we had an opening. So we had hundreds of other units. This is the first HHH funded. A few days later, my team joined groundbreaking in affordable housing development in Mar Vista, where every unit is set aside for low-income households with nearly a quarter specifically geared for individuals with developmental disabilities on the prevention side. And then the following day, I was there to break ground on another HHH-backed property at Missouri Place in West LA, across from Channel 11's headquarters. 3 days in LA, 1 week. On top of that, and you'll hear about it, we highlighted new initiatives just past month on jobs, storage, women's study on the needs in Skid Row, and we have 5 shelters, or bridge housing, a bridge home shelter, set to open in just the next 2 months alone. So the pace of HHH, which we'll get to, you'll see every 2 to 3 weeks a new apartment opening and breaking ground. You'll see shelters opening up every 2 to 3 weeks as well this spring. So it's really a pace that's unprecedented, not only in LA, but unmatched across the country. And yesterday, thanks to state dollars, many of you joined us on Skid Row, where we cut the ribbon on our new bin storage facility at 538 San Pedro. And thanks again to Council District 14 and Councilmember Jose Huizar. With this site up and running, we're nearly doubling the amount of storage space in Skid Row. And if you talk to outreach workers, if you talk to our neighbors who are on the streets, if you talk to police, everybody is unified. We need more storage. This is producing one of the biggest storage centers in the country. And remember that the things that we take for granted, the pictures that connect us with family, the driver's license we need to go to a job interview, the clothes we need to wear, this gives people much more than storage. It gives them a hope to accelerate the solution off of the streets that we have, while increasing the cleanliness and security that so many of our unhoused neighbors confront every single day. And last week we were at the Downtown Women's Center to announce the 6th LA Women's Needs Assessment. And for the first time, it covered the entire city with ambitions to hit the entire county, not just downtown, defining the scope of this crisis for women, the specific needs of women who are unhoused. And we're using it to inform our approach going forward, to build on the work from LASO reports on women and Black people experiencing homelessness that resulted in Project 100, which is the project now that we've developed in partnership with community leaders and service providers led by the Downtown Women's Center, focused on clear goals: house at least 100 women on Skid Row, create a training program for cultural awareness and trauma-informed care. So many women are survivors, as we know, of sexual and domestic violence, to really focus in a very targeted way. And we hope to use that model to spread that across the city, and hopefully the county can take that up as well. We're just a few days into February, and there's a really busy calendar of activity to come. So let me get to some of the key announcements. This isn't going to be a year of prevention. We're housing about 133 people a day in LA. 150, this is from about year-old statistics, are becoming homeless each day. So there's a gap of 17. If we can house 17 more people each day, or prevent them from becoming homeless, we can actually see those numbers begin to turn. keeping our city's streets safe and clean, opening shelters, building supportive and affordable housing, and advocating for resources. These are the 4 things I talk about in each of these briefings. The street strategy, the shelter strategy, the housing strategy, and then our engagement with our federal and state partners. And based on what we've done so far in 2020, I know this will be a year of action, serving and lifting up those Angelenos who are experiencing homelessness. At the same time, I want us to remember there's another side to this crisis, and that it isn't enough to deliver housing and services alone. Bringing people indoors is important, but keeping them from ever being outdoors is just as important. So something that we will be highlighting throughout 2020 is what we can do to solve the problem at our doorstep today. Help Angelenos keep up with the rent, avoid eviction, and stay in their homes. That begins with 2 programs led by our Housing and Community Investment Department, or HCID, and Rushmore Cervantes, our general manager, is here with us, and we thank him and his staff for their work. First, they're taking the helm of efforts to implement the law that came into effect at the beginning of this year, AB 1482. As you know, the council and I took action to ensure that the last couple months of the year, there wasn't a loophole of massive evictions, that we protected them before the law came into effect. But now, I guess that's a good angle. But now, AB 1482 is law, and we are going to make sure that we implement it here in Los Angeles. This is a law designed to prevent evictions, protect renters from skyrocketing costs, by enacting a statewide cap on rent hikes and prohibiting landlords from kicking tenants out of their homes without just cause. It mirrors what we had in our rent stabilization ordinance already for units built before 1979. It now applies to every unit in LA, no matter when it was built, and throughout California. You know that we lobbied very hard for this legislation to be passed, and there's a good reason why. We need to stop that flow of people hitting the streets, hitting shelters, living in their cars. The measure doesn't provide guidance on how it's supposed to be administered, so we have begun to interpret that aggressively. HCID is front and center in ensuring that the statute meets its core objectives at the local level. And to make it real in the lives of Angelenos, HCID took the lead at the end of last year to implement, as I mentioned, the no-fault eviction moratorium, and to provide emergency relief to low-income families who are facing steep rent increases, as we saw some bad landlords trying to jack that rent up for the last 2 months of the year. Now that it's officially on the books, AB 1482 can help us implement, and with this law in place, we'll be able to offer protections against rent gouging, no-cause evictions to Angelenos in nearly 158,000 new units citywide, all of them apartments, homes, and condos that were not covered by our rent stabilization ordinance. We're going to adopt a very robust enforcement program requiring registration of rental units and their rents, and making sure that all the programs built into our RSO is available to tenants. Why is that important? I know it's a big mouthful of things. We often didn't know where the apartments are. We don't know what the rents are. By registering these, when somebody comes to us, we'll be able to double check that immediately and see and hold those unscrupulous landlords accountable and enforce the law. We're going to hire 20 new staff members to put this crucial measure into place and provide information to our customers and residents and investigate non-compliance and potential violations. We're also going to help landlords and expand our education and outreach efforts for both tenants and their landlords, so that tenants know their rights and landlords know their responsibilities. And we're going to collaborate with our county partners to extend existing services to both landlords and tenants, whether that involves greater oversight, investigations into illegal rent increases and evictions, or more advanced notifications of violations before anyone faces legal action, which is ideal. Just the beginning of our renter protection and homelessness prevention push, together, for instance, with our, as we talked about, I believe, last briefing, our tenant protection through right to counsel, which we're piloting with the county as well. Second, in just under a month, we're going to expand a homelessness prevention pilot called Solid Ground. And I really want to thank Councilmember Kern Price for being here. I'll get to him in a moment. Every person who does this work, who's involved with the issue of homelessness, knows the stories that we hear every single day. Workers, parents, families, our neighbors who miss a single rent bill, or payment, have a delinquent utility bill, a grocery bill, maybe a medical emergency, and they're that close to losing everything and being forced onto the streets. These are households right on the brink of homelessness, and we don't offer them enough help. In fact, when they're on the streets, we still don't offer enough help, though we are providing a historic amount. But wouldn't it be great to make sure that they never hit the street? Sometimes the unexpected happens to all of us, or a landlord raises the rent, or a medical emergency strikes, and people can be left with nowhere to turn. So we talk a lot about homelessness prevention. Now we're going to do something about it. Solid Ground is that program. Here's how it works. If you're a family that finds itself facing financial hardship and teetering on the edge of homelessness, you can come to one of our city's family source centers throughout the city, conveniently to wherever is closest to you, and get up to 3 months of assistance with anything from rent to utility arrears to transportation or food. Whatever it takes to help you get your finances in order. That helping hand of Angelinos helping Angelinos. On top of that immediate aid, participants can get as well a year of additional wraparound services, support, financial counseling if you're dealing with debt, coaching, opening a savings account together, and other resources so that it isn't just getting through this emergency to face another one, but to have long-term security for you and your family. It started with a $300,000 investment from a great supervisor, Sheila Kuehl, who I'm actually going to be meeting with just after this, at a family source center run by the city in Van Nuys. And this past October, our city council authorized $1 million to expand this program to 8 family source centers across LA, in neighborhoods with some of the highest concentrations of low-income residents. And our target is to reach hundreds of households just in the first year, maybe hit as many as 1,000 or 1,500 residents who could avert disaster and steer clear of homelessness. Again, will help us close that number. Maybe 150 won't be the daily number of Angelinos becoming homeless, and then we can start turning a corner. It would be an incredible start if we can get these families on solid ground. And none of this would have been possible without Supervisor Kuehl and Councilmember Curran Price, who really was the champion of this program on the City Council. He brought this motion to the council, worked with our office together and HCID to bring it to life. He's been an extraordinary leader, dear friend, partner, and ally on issues of poverty and housing, and I'd like to turn it over to him to say a few words. Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm really proud to stand with the city family and 2 guests whom you're going to hear from shortly. As we work to address this real critical issue that impacts obviously not just our community, but it's a nationwide concern. For the past several years, under the mayor's leadership, we've been putting an unprecedented amount of attention toward homelessness and an effort to, as I'm saying, stop the bleeding. Working together, we made some substantial headway into addressing some of the root causes that we all understand now of homelessness. Increase of rent, the lack of affordable housing, health disparities, mental health issues, and other social and economic disparities that have contributed to this downward spiral. All of us are dedicated to providing more resources for our homeless communities through outreach, support services, and housing, both temporary and permanent. But we can't build our way out of this disaster. The construction of housing is not the answer alone. As the mayor pointed out, every day 150 people become homeless in LA County. Individuals are falling into homelessness faster than our homeless services can help them out. That's why I was proud to introduce in council LA's Homeless Prevention Program. We've seen the positive effects of this program in New York and Chicago, and I firmly believe that it could be part of the solution here in Los Angeles as well. If we're to combat the crisis of our generation, we have to do something to help individuals at risk of becoming homeless, not just homeless, but at risk of becoming homeless. So working in partnership with our family source centers, we're going to be able to catch Angelinos, those vulnerable Angelinos, and their families before they fall. This proposal will provide financial assistance for families to pay things like rent, utility bills, and even food. It will also provide access, more importantly, to financial assistance for families who can benefit from financial education classes, public benefits, case management, and other services. So we really want to wrap the services around those individuals in need. We understand the magnitude of this problem. The sad reality is that a lot of people are one paycheck, job loss, or medical emergency away from being homeless. For these reasons, we're going to be charging full force ahead to help every Angelino, whether they're experiencing homelessness or on the brink of homelessness. If everything stays on track, we should have this program up and running next month. My staff, along with the housing department and other providers, are going to be meeting with the representatives from New York and Chicago to learn more about their experiences and best practices as we work toward implementation. We want to be able to say that we did everything we could to prevent people from ending up on our streets. So again, I just want to thank the mayor for his commitment, for his leadership. I want to thank HCID and the city family for working with my office and the city council to make this program a reality. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Councilmember Price. Appreciate your leadership on this and the way that your team has really embraced this. So for some folks, I know we stream this live on Facebook. If you're tuning in for the first time, that would be the end of the first act. This is a multi-act play each time. And these came about just some history because people would ask questions, what's happening on homelessness? And I just felt, I know these are long and I always appreciate how patient the press is, a chance to really tell Angelenos what their government is doing collectively and how robust that is, how strong those partnerships are, to share personal stories as we'll hear today as well. So next I want to talk about something called LA Enterprise and everything that we're doing to deliver emergency assistance, rental aid services for struggling Angelenos is absolutely vital to our prevention efforts. Yet we know we can go a step further by helping Angelenos develop the skills and resources to stand on their own 2 feet. That's our goal long term. To cover their own bills without needing a helping hand, avoid the feeling that any missed payment could result in them being out of their homes. Building up that kind of self-sufficiency is the goal of LA Enterprise. Our program that is designed to empower homeless or housing insecure Angelenos to put the tools of entrepreneurship into their hands, to give them the support, the training, and encouragement they need to start a new chapter. Many of you came to Getty House, the official mayoral residence, where we have each year a holiday gift buying marketplace. And everything either goes to enterprises that donate a portion of their proceeds to the fight against homelessness, or to folks who have lived experience with homelessness that today are creating amazing things, products, services in LA. LA Enterprise kind of builds on that. In this program's first year, our aim is to provide 200 unhoused Angelenos with a path to financial stability through self-employment and funding. We're going to help participants from everything from business training to credit repair assistance, connect them to the city's work source or business source centers where they can get an employment referral or apply for a microloan to get their business started. We're going to run a Train the Trainer course led by my entrepreneur in residence, Sonia Passy, who's the founder of Free From, and is an amazing Angeleno, a real angel in the city of angels. It's a gender-based violence survivor advocacy organization. And together with CAST, which my wife and I have served on the advisory board for many years, the Coalition to Abolish Slavery and Trafficking and a Safe Place for Youth, we're going to train 15 homeless facility case managers as business startup coaches. I'm so pumped about this. It is going to be an amazing thing. I've met many unhoused Angelenos at a job fair that we did a few years ago at LA Trade Tech. A woman came up and said, I was living on the streets 2 years ago, now I'm making purses. This is my purse company. And to see that transformation from disempowerment to empowerment by training folks with entrepreneurial skills is really a transformative thing to witness. It's a proven model, a pilot by Free From that resulted in 24 business starts, 100% of which turned a profit in the first month. That's an amazing, I think that deserves a round of applause actually. I think that's an amazing statistic. And saw 1/3 of the founders transition from shelters into secure housing. When all is said and done, LA Enterprise will do more than simply prevent homelessness through, among hundreds of Angelenos, though that would be enough. It will also provide one of the best possible answers to this crisis. The most effective way to get and to stay housed is to get a good job and a decent income, with real economic opportunity and upside. The chance to earn higher pay that covers the cost of rent, allows you to pay the bills, and more. That's our core mission, and just a month into its existence, LA Enterprise has seen more than 60 participants come through its doors, all of them drawn from populations that tend to be the most likely to wind up on the streets or on the streets. There's a former person who was in the foster care system who had to leave her abusive caretaker and wound up living on the sidewalk, who now wants to start a business that supports kids like herself. There's the former construction supervisor who became homeless due to a disability, who wants to gain financial literacy and build housing for unsheltered Angelenos. Then there's the full-time barbershop employee who doesn't make enough to make ends meet, but he wants his own shop, but lacked the skills and tools to make that happen. And then there's Anna Zimmerman. It's her first press conference, but I know she's going to share her story, and I want to thank you for your courage being here today. She lived in a rescue mission for 2 years, And it was there she discovered a passion for a seemingly simple task, writing a thank you note. Probably our kids don't even know what that is today, but you can take out pieces of paper, kids, and actually write things down. She used to write thank you notes to the organization's supporters and backers. And eventually she got in touch with Free From, which helped her chart a course to financial security, sustainable income, savings, credit, enough to build up the wealth and resources to allow her to strike out on her own. And today, Anna isn't just a feel-good story of someone who hit rock bottom of homelessness and turned her life around. She's a business owner. She reminded me this morning we met when I walked her daughter to school on Walk Your Child to School Day 2 years ago. And she has turned, one of her daughters is named Ellie, and she named her company Ellie Greetings. And she turned what she loved doing into that company, helped earn her way out of homelessness, and showed with the right support, the entrepreneurial spirit can be transformative. So I'm going to turn it over to Anna to tell her story, and why don't we welcome her and thank her for being here today.
Thank you so much, and thanks to everybody here for giving me the opportunity to share a little bit about my story. My name is Anna, and I am the owner of Ellie Greetings, a small business of handmade greeting cards. It has been almost 4 years since I decided to leave my ex-partner and father of my 2 daughters. I was taken in by a domestic violence shelter here in Los Angeles, and little by little I started to think that I could create a bright and new future for me and my daughters. As part of the shelter program, we were required to make thank you cards almost on a weekly basis. One of the teachers there said that it would be a good idea for me to start selling them. So I put a little table at the entrance of the shelter and started selling the cards for members and staff and visitors of the shelter. I met Sonia and Tanya on August of 2017 when I was still living at the shelter, and that's when my journey into owning my own business started. I was so excited to know more about entrepreneurship and the possibility of me having my own business. Tanya helped me create a name for my business, design a logo and business cards, create a business plan, and find a pro bono lawyer for me to register my business. On December of 2017, Free From invited me to participate in the first major's holiday market, and I sold tarot cards. That sale helped me enormously, and finally, after 19 months of living in a shelter, I was able to move into my own apartment. In the beginning of 2018, Sonia asked me if I would like to sell my cards at Gifted, which is Free From's online enterprise, and also asked me if I was willing to work at Gifted, running the store as a part-time. And that's what I really needed at the time, working at Gifted during the day while my kids were in school and making my cards at night. I sell majority of my cards during the holidays, and that really allows me to plan for my year. The extra income I get from my business is the one that helps me pay for my car insurance, for my car registration, to buy uniforms for my daughters, and have some extra emergency savings. And the extra cash I get from my income is the one that helps me to make ends meet. Owning my own business makes me feel empowered, independent, confident, and successful. I am very excited and very thankful for everyone who has made it possible for this new program to start. It has a great potential to help folks like me who wants to start their own business and work their way up. Thank you. I have my own Instagram account. It's LEG13, and you can contact me directly if you want to make any orders. I have pictures there of my cards, or at Gifted.
What's your Instagram again?
It's
LEELLIG13, and also at Gifted, Free From's online enterprise. I sell my cards there too. Muy agradecida siempre, muy agradecida con la vida por las oportunidades que me han dado, muy agradecida con Free From, que siempre me ha brindado el apoyo, agradecida al 100% por todas las oportunidades que he tenido, por mis hijas, porque son el motor que me empujan cada día a trabajar, a salir adelante. Me encanta verlas, que me miran trabajando en las noches haciendo mis cartas, mis tarjetas. Ayer en la noche estaba practicando mi speech en frente de ellas y mi chiquita estaba aplaudiéndome. Aunque yo estaba nerviosa y se me olvidaba toda, ella estaba muy emocionada y me estaba aplaudiendo. So, eso es lo que más me motiva. Muchas gracias.
We are so excited, and I want to make sure you didn't miss the marketing opportunity to tell people where. So if sales go up, please feel free to spread the word, do pieces on this program, etc. And we're so fortunate in this city to have the private sector and nonprofit leaders willing to give their time and their energy and expertise to the public good. Some of these Angelinos are innovators like Sonia Pasi, who people have taken an idea and turned it into a successful social enterprise, and who know their obligations are much more than just the simple bottom line. I wanted to ask Sonia to come forward and speak a little bit more about what Free From is doing. She, as I mentioned, is our fifth year of Entrepreneurs in Residence, where we bring entrepreneurs actually into City Hall to help everything from improving our business operations to focusing on key industries, and we really couldn't do this work without her. So Sonia, come on forward.
While I adjust this microphone to my height, I'm also going to tell you Anna. Is that better?
Yep.
Anna also does custom cards. She makes kids' birthday cards with unicorns and superheroes, and we'll make a very special moment that much more special for you. Thank you very much, Mayor Garcetti, for the kind introduction. Free From is an LA-based organization on a mission to create pathways to financial security and long-term safety for survivors of gender-based violence. And we do this in three ways. We build capacity within the movement to end gender-based violence through our national trainings and our annual Survivor Wealth Summit. We create self-help resources and networks for survivors, such as through our peer-to-peer financial support groups and our tech compensation platform. And by working with banks, credit card companies, employers, and state legislatures to create policies and systems that support survivors' financial recovery. A few years ago, we established an entrepreneurship pilot program and worked with 24 survivors across LA, Oakland, and San Francisco, one-on-one for 6 months to start their own businesses. Many people thought what we were doing was too ambitious, that survivors couldn't handle the pressure and the hard work of starting a business while they were living in a shelter. I remember one VC even asking me what the education level was of the survivors we were working with, and if they had a background in business or finance. Of the 24 survivors that we worked with, all 24 successfully launched their businesses. 100% of those businesses made a profit in the first month that they launched. And 18 months later, these businesses were still generating income. What these entrepreneurs demonstrated was the tremendous resilience and determination to survive of folks experiencing hardship and homelessness. Most businesses are not built with an MBA and Series A funding. They're built with drive and necessity. And we laud Fortune 500 CEOs for their grit, but folks experiencing homelessness have this in droves. Moreover, they have diverse talents and astounding creative potential that is currently going untapped. Through LA Enterprise, we're building capacity and an ecosystem to support folks experiencing homelessness by training case managers and advocates at two of our city's finest organizations, CAST, the Coalition to Abolish Slavery and Trafficking, and Safe Place for Youth, on how to support their current and future clients in building income and safety through entrepreneurship. Thank you to Mayor Garcetti, to Sonia Blake, the Mayor's Director of Community Business who has spearheaded this project, and to our sponsors for investing in this project. We know that if everyone in this city has the opportunity to live out their potential and achieve financial security, we all win. We all get to live in a city that is rich in culture and ideas and beauty and safety. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sonia. So next, let's turn to our street strategies in the 4 areas I said: street, shelter, housing, and advocacy. We know that ending homelessness begins on our streets, and we're staying focused on keeping our neighborhoods and our sidewalks clean, expanding sanitation and trash pickup services, reaching out directly to Angelinos and encampments to help them clean up their own areas, And loss outreach workers and our care teams remain on the front lines of this task in some of the most difficult circumstances imaginable. It's easy to bash them, it's easy to find another place where there's trash. It is tough work, and I want to thank them because they don't hear that enough. Whether it's in Hollywood or the Valley, South LA or Skid Row, I'm reminded of a simple truth that drives this work. Every unhoused Angelino deserves the chance to get off the streets and live under a sturdy roof. These are the values that drive our street strategies, and here's some of what we accomplished in December and January. Since December, more than 2,532 individuals were contacted by a city-funded LAHSA outreach worker, which, as we frequently note, is only a small fraction of outreach, but this is as part of the new approach to our street multidisciplinary teams. Citywide, our LAHSA teams have made 1,033 permanent housing placements. And the city-funded outreach teams provided more than 8,511 services to clients during that time, whether it's mental health care programs, replacing IDS, in placements in emergency shelter, and more. And our Care and Care Plus teams now have embedded outreach workers, so we're not just bringing sanitation workers by themselves. When that launched on October 1st, we've now provided outreach to more than 2,400 individuals and provided services to nearly 9,000 to connect unsheltered residents to housing and programs. Altogether, we have done 3,353 cleanups at homeless encampments, 4,228 tons of solid waste, 18,265 sharps and needles, 15,529 pounds of hazardous waste have been removed from city streets. And to give you a sense of how much we've scaled up this response, in January, we more than tripled the amount of human waste collected, increased by 6-fold the number of sharps and needles collected in 1 month relative to the same time last year. Now, is it enough? I still want to see more. We're going to continue looking at that, but it is a dramatic increase. And all told, this work by LAHSA and our sanitation and care teams is making a difference, not just for our homeless neighbors, but for everybody who is their neighbor who is housed as well. Bridge housing and shelter. Second, let's go to shelter and bridge housing. This is going to be a big 6 months, the fastest 6 months you've ever seen. As I said in the past briefing, over an 18-month period, we are opening about 25 different shelters across the city. We have to take on this crisis, we know, from every angle. Prevention, work on the streets, but the most critical immediate response that I think everybody can rally around right now is getting people off the streets now. And as we speak, thanks to our Bridge Home shelters, we're adding more beds at a faster clip than any city or county in America. And together with our county beds, we can rapidly move folks under a roof, and when they're there, connect them with services and put them on a path to permanent housing. We are on track to stand up a total of 26 shelters by July. That will fill about 2,000 beds worth of solutions to Angelinos experiencing homelessness. And we have at least 3 more to add to that tally. And council members have been wonderful, and they're coming to me all the time. What about this property? What about there? And I'd say the same back to them. Keep looking for more. If you have 2 in your district, awesome. You're in the lead, but I want 4. If you got 3, I want 6. Let's keep going, and let's see how many beds we can get built as quickly as possible. We're on the cusp of a flurry of activity the next couple of months, when in this month and next month, a bunch of shelters will be opening. So let me give you a rundown, starting in the great new 9th District with Councilmember Price and Supervisor Hilda Solis. We met together and found county property on Hope Street. The construction began in September and will be completed this month. And when it's ready for residents, it'll be a sprung structure tent with 100 beds for homeless Angelinos. Next door in Council District 10, with Councilmember Wesson, the Western Avenue project that's located in the parking lot of his own Council District office, with 15 beds for unsheltered women, women-led families, and single women. That is slated to be completed in mid-March, so next month, with 1736 Family Crisis doing the services. Staying in Council District 10, you remember all the marches in Koreatown? Well, that parking lot is going to be turned into permanent supportive housing down the street a few blocks down the street, down Wilshire, at Lafayette Place, where you saw all those folks that were encamped around the tennis courts there. That now is going to be a shelter. Tennis courts are gone. We're rebuilding them, don't worry, elsewhere. 70 beds for men and women with the Salvation Army providing services. It's a novel construction, one that we are testing everything. That's 2 shelters in Council District 10 that will open. And then there are 2 in Council District 11, where Mike Bonin, some of you remember the town hall in Venice. Well, that shelter's opening. The first is going to be, it's the largest, I think, of all of the ones we'll have opened. 100 beds for adults, 54 beds for youth, who are transition-aged youth who are transitioning out of our foster care system. It's going to be supported by PATH and a safe place for youth. Construction wrapped up this week. It is slated to open by the end of the month. And the second site is at the VA, where we set up temporary housing and services for 100 unsheltered veterans, men and women who have worn, sorry, men in this case, not and women, who have worn our nation's uniform. That will open up by mid next month. All told, that's an additional 439 shelter beds coming online before April, on top of 519, will nearly double in the next month and a half. That'll put us nearly halfway to our July 1st goal across 14 sites, an unprecedented pace of development to draw people indoors from some of our highest density encampment areas in the city. Let's turn to permanent supportive housing. As I mentioned earlier, we started 2020 with the opening at 88th in Vermont. It was awesome to finally meet the people who were there. And I gotta say, thanks to photographers who showed their faces, journalists who actually told their stories, people began to greet their neighbors instead of some abstraction of who they were and what this was about. It was a massive, the beginning of a massive ramp up with 50 supportive housing projects that are expected to open or break ground in 2020. 50 different apartment projects just this year. That works out to one development opening every 2 or 3 weeks for the remainder of this year. These are all part of 150 permanent supportive housing projects that are either open in the pipeline, representing 10,564 affordable and supportive units, 118 of those using HHH. Everybody fixates on HHH. We said that would help. Remember, there's other funding sources too, and we combine them all. Altogether, that's going to help us get 13,000 bedrooms, which means maybe as many as 15,000 Angelinos will be housed, and over 10,000 of those will be for folks who are formerly homeless. These aren't idle facts and figures. They represent construction that is real and that is happening. And though progress never happens fast enough for me, we are really seeing tangible results. And a steady stream of groundbreakings and ribbon cuttings are happening across our neighborhoods. In fact, since the last press briefing, 5 supportive housing developments have completed construction, I'm proud to announce. Taken together, they will add over 320 new units, 20 supportive housing projects with 1,341 new units will be done by the end of this year. And that's on top of another 15 city finance supportive housing sites with 800 units that we've finished in the time we were waiting for HHH. We're all impatient with the pace of progress, but whether it's new building types that we're experimenting with our carpenters unions and our downtown developers and other people who are right now in the desert in Las Vegas putting together new prototypes, whether it was the HHH competition where 6 different projects were given funds to do things quicker and cheaper, we are moving forward. So first, we've seen 7 HHH projects that are moving towards completion in Council District 13. Many of you can see on the 101, Path Metro Villas 2, 83% complete with 115 units for folks who are living on the sidewalks now. Here in Skid Row, Council District 14, the 649 lofts, 76% complete with 55 units at the epicenter of this crisis. Casa del Sol, in our new council president, Nuri Martinez's district in Sun Valley, is more than 2/3 complete with 44 units for people who are chronically homeless experiencing mental illness. Western Avenue Apartments in Council District 8 is more than half complete with 33 supportive housing units. Floor 401 lofts, also in Council District 14, over half done with 99 units on the way. Metamorphosis back out in the valley on Foothill, featuring nearly 50 units, is halfway done, and Aria Apartments in our first Council District is half complete with 57 units. I highlight all these because people often ask what's happening in my neighborhood, and I like to tell people where they are and how they're spread around the city. And there's a series of developments specifically designed to serve 2 of our most vulnerable populations, seniors and veterans. So again, in Sun Valley, nearly 100 units, that's 97% complete, the Sun Valley Senior Veterans Apartments. Pico Robertson Senior Community on 8866 West Pico Boulevard is 78% done with 48 units. And together that adds up to nearly 600 units being built as we speak here today, on top of the developments that I mentioned before. All of them are designed to serve our most vulnerable Angelinos. It's a sign of even more to come. Finally, advocacy. Each of these briefings I say, anybody who thinks that the city is an island on our own or even has the authority to address most of these problems, we want to continue to push people towards where the real dollars are, which is at the state and federal level. And I highlight the historic work that we've done to advocate in Sacramento and in Washington to confront this crisis with deeper partnership and to demand of all of the levels that represent us that same sense of urgency that we are showing. We see it across California. I was recently in Washington, D.C. at the U.S. Conference of Mayors as part of a panel with mayors from across the country. We saw in our nation's capital, footsteps away from Congress and the White House, 10 cities as well. This is a national crisis that will require national leadership to solve it. I was very proud of our state, because you go up and down the state, and we know from the Central Valley to the Inland Empire to our coastal areas, north and south, that this is the #1 issue for Californians. We worked with Governor Newsom as part of the Big 13 mayors of the 13 most populous cities. We met with him and expanded by 50% what the state gave us in emergency grants. I was very pleased to see in his budget $750 million, an increase of $100 million, and I'll be meeting with him later today to talk about how we can get that money out there and quickly. And the task force that my friend and colleague Mark Ridley Thomas and my brother Mayor Darrell Steinberg of Sacramento co-chaired identified the existing state resources to dedicate to the fight, and all 13 mayors endorsed those conclusions. Whether it was state-owned properties that could be used for shelter, or sending emergency resources like trailers that were used during the fires. We're going to continue working with Sacramento. I'd say thank you, it's more than it's ever been, and we need more. So we can't announce today, but we're working with local legislators to expand that amount and to see what more we can get in the budget, so this can be treated like the crisis that it is at a time when the state has a budget surplus. We put it into rainy day funds. As I say, it is pouring. It is time to unleash some of those dollars. We know that what that does, whether it was the storage yesterday, whether it's shelters that were popping up, the state is making a difference, and we thank Governor Newsom and the legislature for that. Finally, as I mentioned, I was in DC, and there's no secret here that oftentimes we have very strong disagreements between the Trump administration and the values of the city and of the state. But we have made very clear that we will work with anybody, and this is under everybody's watch. This is President Trump's watch, this is Gavin Newsom's watch, this is my watch, this is our supervisors and council members' watch. We need to depoliticize and de-weaponize what this is in order to help save lives. So when President Trump first turned his attention to Los Angeles and San Francisco, instead of just punching him back in a partisan way, I welcomed him to the fight. Said 5 things they could specifically do from Washington to help this crisis now. And that led to a series of conversations with Secretary Ben Carson on the phone about ways that we could continue to expand and where we could get more help from Washington. In each case when we talked, kind of contrary probably to any outside person's thoughts, we actually got along really well. Constructive discussions about how additional resources could be brought, federal surplus property, federal dollars, some of the help from some medical professionals that work for the federal government as well to give wraparound services. And I went to Washington, D.C. and met 2 Fridays ago with Secretary Carson, following 2 or 3 days of our teams meeting together that were very constructive. And a week from today, Secretary Carson will be here for a homelessness session at USC. There's a symposium on addressing homelessness in California. And it's my hope that we will find agreement with the federal government as soon as possible. And as soon as we do, we'll be able to announce that to you. As I said, don't expect the cavalry to come from California, but when that gap is only 17 more people a day, they could be the difference that turns us from adding homelessness, number of homeless Angelenos each year, to reducing them. And I look forward to that day. So let me see if there's anything else. Finally, we need to see the spirit that we witnessed, and I want to thank so many Angelenos. 8,000 Angelenos doing one thing. When's the last time that happened? Well, I guess it was a year ago when we did the pit count, the point in time count, but it is a moment when we see the hearts of this city. And I want to thank people who in their neighborhood made sure that nobody goes uncounted. And I want to remind people it's the census this year as well, and we should make sure that every unhoused Angeleno is counted and that every Angeleno is counted, because those federal dollars we get for things like homelessness rely on our census, but we'll bring that back at the next briefing as well. But we fanned out over 163 sites across LA County wearing bright vests, clipboards in hand. I was a part of it, finding folks, counting them. It's a frustrating night because it's the only night you don't offer help to those folks, but it's a great night. And thank you to LASA, because it helps make sure we know what the situation is on the street, where people are living, and the more in-depth surveys that happen as part of that tell us how many women, how many people are African American, Latino, Anglo, what ages they are, who's a veteran, who's experiencing mental health. Everybody has their ideas, then we get real numbers as well.
Mr. Mayor, when do we get those real numbers?
Usually takes them about 2 months. I wish it was much faster. I'm the guy like picking up the phone the next week saying, do you have any initial ones? But it usually takes them, in April is usually when we get them, or May. But we'll see if we can make that faster as well. It's also a clear message that we see you. And I want to thank everybody who's done that. Finally, I want to thank our Council President, Mary Martinez, who just took over. She has prioritized homeless families as one of the Families First agenda that she's going to be talking about. And as I mentioned, I've been sitting down with each of our supervisors, going up the hill, meeting with them, to make sure that we continue to increase our city-county coordination and to inspire other cities to join us in this fight across LA County. Many are and many feel short. Brevemente también en español, and then I'll take your questions. Gracias por estar, don't worry, it's not the whole
Oh my
speech.
gosh.
Gracias por estar aquí para nuestra sesión informativa regular sobre el trabajo que estamos haciendo para enfrentar la crisis de indigencia. Cada día avanzamos en las piezas centrales de nuestra estrategia y gracias a la gente aquí, este equipo increíble, porque estamos limpiando la ciudad, está construyendo más unidades de vivienda y las estadísticas en esta sesión nos da una idea del trabajo de toda la gente en Los Ángeles a parar la indigencia. Especialmente 2 o 3 puntos. Con la implementación de la ley AB 1482, make sure I got the right number, nuestra ciudad tendrá la autoridad de proteger contra rentas exorbitantes y desalojos sin causa. Tenemos protecciones para nuestros inquilinos y la responsabilidad de los dueños de nuestros edificios. La segunda iniciativa es un programa que se llama Solid Ground, que también ayudará a prevenir la indigencia. Si alguna familia se encuentra en peligro de perder su hogar o está enfrentando una crisis financiera, cualquier familia podrá visitar uno de nuestros centros de recursos de familia para recibir ayuda financiera y apoyo adicional para asegurarnos que tengan un plan de largo plazo. Además, nuestro nuevo programa LA Enterprise está diseñado a empoderar a los angelinos sin hogar a tener las herramientas para convertirse en empresarios y apoyarlos con talleres y recursos para que puedan empezar un nuevo capítulo en sus vidas. Y gracias a Ana por su historia y su visión en nuestra ciudad. Con nuevos albergues de un puente a casa y viviendas de apoyo, este año será un año histórico, con más unidades de vivienda, con más albergues de un puente a casa y finalmente miles de nuevas camas.